Hello, my name is Jenny, and I'm working for the IEC as National Director for Combating Anti-Semitism in K-12. And we are here today. Welcome to our panel where our fascinating speakers will discuss indoctrination of anti-Semitism, indoctrination in the education system, and how anti-Semitic and anti-Israel rhetorics are infiltrating our education system. And just before we will start, I want to share with you, you all know that in the last 2.5 years, we saw uprise of anti-Semitism, not only on college campuses where it was very hard time, but also in K-12. And I want to encourage everyone in this room and also share it with your friends that if your kid, or maybe you're an educator and in your school you experience anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic incident, or any rhetoric about anti-Israel rhetoric, please report it. We have at the IEC as well School Watch platform where you can report an incident as it's the first step to start fighting anti-Semitism. And just to start this session, I'll say there is no such a thing as small incident that doesn't worth reporting. So please remember that. And now I want to introduce our fascinating speakers. Dr. Miri Bar-Halpern is the Director of Trauma Training and Services at Parents for Peace and lecturer in psychology at Harvard Medical School. And with her, we'll have Mubin Shaikh, exit peer specialist, and Arno Michaelis, exit peer specialist, and they will tell about themselves and their stories at this panel.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here. I'm in this crazy world of moderating a conversation with my colleagues and best friends, so it's really weird. I've never moderated a panel before, so we're going to do it more as a welcome to our world and what we do, so bear with me. So, Parents for Peace, we are a nonprofit organization that's been fighting radicalization. We've been here, what, for about 10 years, guys? 2016. Arno, do you want to share how we started?
Yeah, the origin story of Parents for Peace is from Memphis, Tennessee. There was an Afro-American family named the Bledsoes. They ran a tour business, taking people to Graceland and Beale Street and whatnot. They were very successful. Their eldest son, Carlos, was radicalized into an Islamist, violent extremist ideology while he was in college. Carlos was planning to bomb a synagogue. And Baruch Hashem, the logistics of that did not work out, but his plan B was to shoot up a U.S. Army recruiting station, which he did, and he murdered a U.S. Army service member. Carlos is in jail for the rest of his life. Carlos's father, Melvin, who passed away a few months ago, may his memory be a blessing, and we carry it forward in all the work that we do, and his sister, Monica, started Parents for Peace as the resource they wished they had when they started to notice that Carlos was having problems and that he was falling under the influence of these ideologies. So since then, Parents for Peace has developed a toll-free United States and Canada-wide helpline that people can call when they're concerned about a loved one who seems to be radicalized. We coach those families regarding best practices to keep that person on a healthier path. We also work directly with the radicalized individuals themselves. And when we're not doing our helpline work, we're out in the community training first responders, frontline personnel, like law enforcement, educators, mental health professionals, and social workers regarding best practices to deal with extremism.
So that's what we do. Much needed these days. But I want to get a little bit personal. So we're going to share in a very vulnerable way our stories and how it's all connected. So I'm going to start. When someone asks me, describe yourself, I always say before or after October 7th. So if you ask me who I was before October 7th, I'm a mom, I'm a psychologist. I devoted my career to understanding trauma and different levels of care. I have 2 beautiful children. I'm married to an amazing husband that's right here, and I'm going to embarrass him a little bit. Hi. I'm Israeli, I'm a Zionist, I'm a secular Jew. I don't practice from religion perspective, but I'm very, very culturally Jewish. And I grew up during the Second Intifada. My husband lost his father in 9/11, and that made me really decide, as part of my journey and growing up during the Intifada, that I want to dedicate my life to help victims of trauma and terrorism. So I wrote a book that was published in Israel to help kids from Sderot who experienced terrorism. And that book was then published in the United States, but I was asked to change the cover because the book was named Becoming a Superhero, a book for children who experienced terrorism. And I was told there's no terrorist attack in the United States. So I need to change it to Becoming a Superhero, a book for children who experienced trauma. And then Boston Marathon happened. I was like, part of my journey, those are my kids, Noam and Arya. I don't think you guys heard that story, actually. So when Noam, my son, was 15 months old, we discovered he has a very rare condition called subglottic stenosis. He was hospitalized and he was in induced coma for a week. Lucky for our family, our daughter suffered from the same condition, and when she was 10 months old, we went through the same thing with her, but during COVID. So we were stuck in the PICU for about a month. And during the time, I was in my fight, flight, freeze, amygdala brain, and as a way of doing something with myself, I wrote a handout for parents who experienced similar kind of a condition that was based on skills. So everything I was practicing every day during the time they were in coma, I kind of wrote it together, and then MJH has been using it since then, and I became an advocate for parents who go through something similar and do not have the support from the hospital. So I'm a doer. And I'm sharing this with you not because I love putting pictures of my family out there, but to show you that there is a pathway from trauma to post-traumatic growth. So from doing that, I gained a sense of support and a sense of meaning. And I became the co-chair of the Parent Family Advisory Committee and started giving grand rounds, and I won an Etherdome Challenge Award, which is about innovation in mental health and all of this kind of stuff. So those are my kids today. They're fine. They're beautiful and happy. Even when they're driving me nuts, they're great. So I'm a quote person, so bear with me. But I love this quote by Baldwin that says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing will be changed without being faced." On October 7th, I had this in my mind. I knew the feeling of fear and stress and the need to do something just so I can breathe myself in a way. So I wrote this message on the Israeli Facebook group, Israeli Massachusetts. It was not one of my best decisions. I wrote, "I'm a trauma therapist. This is my cell phone number. If anybody needs support, just call me." And I was flooded with phone calls. And very quickly, I was very lucky. I was able to mobilize a team of clinicians, and for over a year, we provided free support for the Israeli community in Massachusetts, and then it extended to the Jewish community. And that led to a lot of different things. Some of them you can see over there. So I joined a delegation to Israel. We started to do training for mental health providers in Israel. That led me to meet Susie, who has a podcast, and I joined her as a co-host, and our podcast was called Our Stories Matter, and this season, or that season you see over there, is called We Will Dance Again, and it was about bringing voices of people who were affected by October 7th. So we interviewed Jews and Muslims and Christians about their journey of healing. That led to more training. From the stories of the people I've seen after October 7th, and by the way, they have their own therapist. They came to me and to my colleagues because they didn't feel safe with their therapist. I started hearing similar stories to the things I've heard in my clinic for my non-Jewish clients. And it's this concept that's called traumatic invalidation. So traumatic invalidation was coined by Marsha Linehan and Melanie Arne, which are amazing psychologists. And it's that feeling when you're sharing your pain with someone and their response is, "Oh, it's not a big deal." Or "What about?" Or "You know what? They have it worse than you." Or "Let me tell you how it really means." And when that happens again and again and again, we start really doubting ourselves. It's this feeling of, "Oh my God, I'm going crazy. Maybe everything I thought is true is actually not true." So I start studying that and collecting the stories, and together with my co-author, Dr. Wolfman, we published an article in a peer-reviewed academic journal, not a Jewish journal. It took about a year, but it was important to me that it will be a peer-reviewed because I knew they're going to see my last name and they're going to invalidate 20 years of trauma work. And they did anyway, but that's fine. But that article went viral. And for academic article, it's weird. I mean, people don't read academic article unless you're me in academia. I mean, when was the last time Arno, you read an academic article?
Well, when you publish it.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Or Mubin, you hate academia.
What's that?
You don't like academia.
It's all triggered
get
when you
triggered.
talk
I know,
about
I said academia and Mubin's like, no! But that article resonated, and it's not because I'm this amazing writer. I think people were looking for words to explain what they were feeling. That it's kind of like gaslight, but from scientific perspective. And we basically showed that the Jewish community met all 9 criteria for traumatic invalidation. And we just actually finished a whole survey, and we showed that not only the Jewish community meets the traumatic invalidation criteria, there is high correlation between that, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and even if you're resilient, it's just a buffer. It doesn't really protect you from experiencing traumatic invalidation. That led to more training, different podcasts, and an award. I was in Times Square. This is the highlight. I did not know I'm going to be on a billboard in Times Square. This was a nice surprise. But Parents for Peace heard me in one of my talks. And Miriam Churchill, who is one of the founders of Parents for Peace and the CEO, told me, you don't need to fight alone. So I joined them, and over there it's another way of, by the way, making a difference. I started giving testimonies in State House and school boards, and in Massachusetts, for those of you who are not aware, Massachusetts Teacher Association, they're not great, to say the least. If you want to see anti-Semitism, go to their website. Arno, actually, after my testimony, do you want to say what you said on the radio?
Sure. The Massachusetts Teachers Association was distributing to their students under the guise of resources to talk about Palestine, anti-Semitic content that would have fit right in my neo-Nazi days 30 years ago. One of the resources that these teachers were handing out to kids was a photo of a Magan David made out of folded up dollar bills. These are public school K-12 educators handing this out to kids. Another one of them was a drawing of a snake with its tongue out, and a fist was grabbing the tongue, and a knife was coming to cut the tongue off. And above it, it said, F Zionists. And there was a radio show, and I just called in, and I said, that's almost word for word the same language that I used as a neo-Nazi 30 years ago and that neo-Nazis use today to talk about Israel.
So as you can see, those are the people who stand for me when I'm not in the room, not only when I'm in the room. Always. So long story short, this was my post-traumatic growth. I started doing all those talks. I joined Parents for Peace. I'm the only Jewish person in Parents for Peace, by the way, which is kind of cool.
Not anymore.
Right.
We loved you so much, we're like, we need more Jews in this organization.
I don't feel special anymore.
women.
Our director of operations, Steffi Rapp, is...
Correct. Correct. She's Jewish and Zionist. But before that, I was the only Jewish person there. I loved it. But Parents for Peace really completed the picture for me. So by doing all of that, I really feel that I went from trauma to post-traumatic growth. I mean, after October 7th, I don't know if I shared this with you guys, but I remember walking to my kids' room and literally seeing them covered with blood. And I was thinking to myself, I'm a trauma expert, and I'm having those nightmares post-October 7th, and can only imagine what it's like for someone who doesn't recognize the trigger, who doesn't recognize the signs. And the doing, because doing is the best agency against trauma. It is the antidote for trauma. If you're doing something with value, with meaning, something that you really believe in, it can shift the needle. It's not that the trauma is erased. The trauma of my kids is going to be there. The trauma of October 7th is going to be there. There is a scar. The scar is always going to be there, but the scar is not tamed. It's not read. It's not triggered. It's about living with the trauma and moving forward. It's not about forgetting. It's about changing who you are. It's about rebuilding a meaning. And I feel like, so now I'm wearing those two different hats. I'm treating the victims of hate crime, and I'm also helping the perpetrators of the same crime. And I said before, like, we sound like a horrible joke. It's like a former neo-Nazi, a former Islamist, an Israeli is walking into a bar.
Walk into a bar, have a great conversation, and all get along, because that's what happens when you're not a Hamas hole.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, thank you. We'll be here all
we'll
week.
be-
Tip your servers, ladies and gentlemen.
I can't see it from here, but someone that I work with started kind of taking my quotes and sending it back to me. I was like, did I say that? When did I say that? But this is one of them. Losing our values, I can't see from here. Losing our values, choosing hope is still our power. Remember that fear connects us all as human beings, but so does hope. Hope doesn't erase the darkness. It simply refuses to let the darkness win. I finally have a quote. Okay, so with that, please meet Arno. Jenny, how do we make the video work? Someone might need to press it. Nope, one back. The video is there.
Okay, we don't have the video.
Unless you want him to start singing heavy metal right now, I don't know.
I've never sang in my life. I don't have a lick of musical talent, but if we did have the video, you would see me in 1994, actually on the night that I left neo-Nazi hate groups. Are we punting on that or no? Okay. The video was from my band, which was called Centurion, and the song that we were performing was called This Planet Is Ours. The lyrics, which I wrote, are, which I'm just going to say to you now instead of screaming at the top of my lungs, one, because nobody deserves to hear that, and two, because it gives me a migraine nowadays to scream like that. But the lyrics are, we'll drive the muds out of our land, muds being mud people, which is anyone who we didn't consider white. Congratulations, Mubin. You're a mud person.
We got something in common.
We'll drive the muds out of our land. We'll crush the Jews back into the sand. We'll take it back in this perilous hour. Rahoah, this planet is ours. Rahoah is short for racial holy war. I wrote those lyrics, and I bellowed them on stage at the top of my lungs for all I was worth. Our band had sold 20,000 CDs by the mid-90s, which in white power music terms is like a platinum record. One of the things that motivated me to come public with my story and to talk about it was in 2005, 11 years after I left hate groups, back in the MySpace days, before Facebook, before all that, there was something called MySpace, and a German skinhead messaged me on MySpace 11 years after I left and said, hey Arno, I know you're no longer in the movement, but according to the president of Hammerskin Nation, you're still in good standing. And I just want to let you know that Centurion is still very popular. That's the video. Can we play that? All right. It's just 30 seconds. We'll need sound though.
Look at you, so young. You're gonna need to pretend you're
Without
hearing
the sound,
Arno
yeah,
yell.
you get the picture.
You look like Phil Anselmo from...
I was a huge Phil Anselmo
Yeah.
fanboy.
Pantera.
I'd do all that stuff too. We actually played out mostly in the Midwest. I left the band and the movement really before it could go beyond that. So back to MySpace, this guy said, hey, Centurion's still really popular in Europe, and we were wondering if we flew you to Europe and put a band together for you, if you would be interested in doing like a Centurion revival tour. And I never replied to him, and I was kind of mortified by the entire message. It told me that I couldn't just go traipsing on with my life because this music that I had a hand in creating was still out there. And to this day, you can find Centurion on YouTube. It gets taken down and then somebody puts it up the next day. And always in the comments, the first thing you'll see is like, you know, Arno's a race traitor now. And everybody's like, yeah, well, you know, he'll get his on the day of the rope, but it's still a great band. Like, I still love Centurion. And that was discouraging to me as well, because I was hoping the fact that I'm a race traitor, which means I'm complicit in the destruction of the white race, would turn people off from listening to this music. But apparently that's not the case. Can we go to precocious, cute little Arno?
The cute boy. There we go.
There we go. So believe it or not, just cute little Arno, that's all we need. Right there. We'll stay here for a minute. Believe it or not, the broken, miserable man you saw screaming horrible, hateful, racist, anti-Semitic things on stage in that video is the same person who was this little boy at one time. I think this is a very important thing to always keep front and center in our minds, is that even the most hateful, despicable, violent people were at one time an innocent child that had just as much potential to be a good person as they had potential to be a bad person. I was a pretty wild kid from the get-go, but I really had a lot going for me. I lived in a nice house in a nice neighborhood. My parents were together. They loved me very much. My dad's alcoholism made life difficult for us because we were kind of living beyond our means in this nice house in a nice neighborhood. My mom at times was working 2 jobs to pay the bills, keep the lights on. My dad was always partying. And they were fighting constantly as I grew up. And I really saw my mom's misery was front and center as I grew. And my dad was just behind this haze of alcohol. So in a sense, I felt kind of alone. And instead of being a good kid and being like, hey, Mom, I love you, how can I help? I just started to distance myself from her and from my father, who was a great man, and despite his disease, he always loved me very much, and he did the best he could. And of course, as I distanced myself from the people who loved me, my suffering grew worse, and I started passing that suffering on to other kids. I started out as a bully on the school bus. I got a kick out of it. It was a rush to disrupt the entire school bus. It was a thrill to have other kids and parents and teachers afraid of me. And I developed an addiction to that antisocial behavior. One of the unique things about Parents for Peace is that we treat hate as an addiction. Now, I'm an alcoholic as well. It runs in the family. And being familiar with addiction in the conventional sense, in the context of alcoholism, I can see all the parallels between alcoholism and hate addiction. Today, now it's commonplace and accepted that you can be addicted to gambling, you can be addicted to pornography, and you can be addicted to hate, is the message that Parents for Peace has out there. And what that means is that people who are engaged in hate right now have the capacity to recover and become healthy. The same way an alcoholic can recover, stop drinking, become a healthy, productive, successful citizen. By the time I was 16 years old, I had been violent since I was a little kid. I was addicted to antisocial behavior. I was addicted to shocking people and repulsing people. And that's when I was exposed to white nationalism through white power skinhead music. Somebody put on a bootleg of a bootleg of a bootleg, and put Walkman, remember Walkmans? Yeah, we used to have these little things called Walkmans, and I had the headphones on, and I heard this song from a British skinhead band called Hail the New Dawn. And it had all the imagery of Nazi Germany, and it was all about blood and soil and race and nation. And it told me that I was a white warrior fighting for my race against this evil Jewish plot to kill all the white people on the planet Earth. And as ridiculous as that should sound to any thinking person, to 16-year-old Arno, it was literally music to my ears. And it was music to my ears most of all because it was so repulsive, because it shocked people. And that's what my entry into white nationalism was. I spent 7 years of my life in that, under the influence of that hateful ideology. It nearly killed me. I tried to kill myself twice during that period, both times by slitting my wrists. Fortunately for me, both times I had different skinhead girlfriends who weren't squeamish at the sight of blood and knew enough basic first aid to keep me from bleeding out. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here sharing this story. When people ask me how I got out, which is the most frequently asked question I get, the simple one-word answer is exhaustion. And again, back to addiction. If you go to any 12-step meeting, whether it's AA or NA, what have you, you will find a room full of people who are together because every one of them is sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's the essence of addiction, is that your entire waking life revolves around obtaining the substance you're addicted to, consuming that substance, dealing with the consequences, repeat. Over and over and over and over again. That's life every single day, and it literally sucks the life out of you. After 7 years of living like this, I was utterly exhausted. The exhaustion came from all sorts of directions. I knew what I was doing was wrong from the get-go. There were times as I was hitting someone where I had this inner voice saying, "What's wrong with you? Why are you hitting this person? You don't even know them. They never did anything to you." And I didn't have the courage to even acknowledge that voice, much less answer it. It required energy to constantly suppress this knowledge of how wrong I was. Another exhaustion point was pop culture. I grew up in Wisconsin being a fan of TV, sports, music, film. I still love all those things. When you're a white nationalist, as well as when you're an Islamist, all of those things are forbidden. They are all seen as Zionist propaganda to numb the minds of whatever your in-group is to make you easier to oppress. So as a kid from Wisconsin, I couldn't enjoy a Packer game on Sundays because doing so would make me complicit in the destruction of the white race. Now, the most hypocritical part of my pop culture addiction was definitely my love for the show Seinfeld. That made it really difficult to be an anti-Semite when I loved that show so much, especially since it's observational humor. And as you know, any Seinfeld fan does not go 24 hours without finding multiple Seinfeld references throughout their day. And I talk about Seinfeld a lot, and I've talked about Eddie's an awesome guy, and I love Larry David and everybody else. I've talked to Jason Alexander, I've talked to Wayne Knight. But I really want to talk about Rob Reiner. May his memory be a blessing, and it is very much to me. That band you saw, when we were writing those songs and rehearsing them, every night after band practice, we would plop down on a couch and pop in a videotape of This Is Spinal Tap, written and directed by Rob Reiner. And we were under, make no mistake, when you're a white nationalist, your Judar is on like 1,000 every day, everywhere you go. Jew, where's the Jew? There's a Jew. There's it. Rob Reiner's Jewish. Harry Shearer's Jewish. This guy, Paul Schaefer's Jewish. That guy's Jewish. That guy's Jewish. Like,
That's
we knew.
because we control the media.
Exactly, of course. We knew how Jewish that movie was, yet we loved it, and we knew every single line. The record that we sold 20,000 copies of had 11 tracks on it. And I designed the liner notes that all these lyrics about slaughtering Jews and all this neo-Nazi stuff. At the end of it, I put, this one goes to 11. Ha ha. We did a Spinal Tap cover. We covered Tonight We're Gonna Rock Ya. And we would have hundreds of skinheads moshing to the tune of us covering Spinal Tap. That hypocrisy weighs upon you. It's exhausting. But what most drove me to change was when people I claimed to hate treated me with kindness. And I was so fortunate that time after time, people like a Jewish boss, a lesbian supervisor, Afro-American, Latino, and Asian coworkers treated me with kindness when I least deserved it, but when I needed it most. And that kindness drove home that hypocrisy to, beyond the shadow of a doubt, indicate how wrong I was to assume this ideology as my identity. It brought me to a point of exhaustion where I was looking for an excuse to leave. That excuse came in 2 stages in 1994. Early in the year, my girlfriend and I broke up. Go figure, but hate and violence and alcohol is not a recipe for a healthy relationship between a man and a woman. I found myself a single parent to our 18-month-old daughter, and a couple months after that, the night that video was taken, after that concert, a second friend of mine was shot and killed in a street fight. By that point, I had lost count of how many friends had been incarcerated. And it finally hit me that if I didn't change my ways, death or prison was going to take me from my daughter. Can we go to the next slide, please? Today, this is a glimpse of the life I lead. You see me there with my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Miri Bar-Halpern and Mr. Muslim James Bond, Mubin Shaikh. With us is Rabbi Rachel Sapphire from Temple Beth Elohim in Newton, Massachusetts. That picture was taken this past Yom Kippur when we spoke on the day, and it was an incredible honor. It's an incredible snapshot of how I live nowadays. But quickly, before I pass you on to my guy Mubin, I want to talk about relapse, as long as we're talking about addiction. I went public with my story in 2010. I wrote a book called My Life After Hate. I founded an organization called Life After Hate. My whole brand was Life After Hate. I don't hate any people anymore. I love this life. And I did, and it was very, very genuine. Up until October 7th, 2023. By that time, I had so many Jewish friends who I loved dearly and who loved me. And when I saw what happened, and I will add also, August 5th, 2012 was a big milestone for me. That was the day a guy from my old gang attacked the Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, murdered 7 people because they wore turbans and had brown skin and beards. I met the son of the temple founder a couple months later. His name is Pardeep Singh Kalika. And him and I wrote another book together called The Gift of Our Wounds. We're still great friends to this day. We've done talks all over the world. And after August 5th came the Emmanuel AME shooting, and the shooting in Sandy Hook, and the shooting in El Paso, and this shooting and that shooting, the shooting in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh. Every time one of these attacks happened, no matter who was the perpetrator, whether it was a mad white guy or a mad brown guy or whatever their deal was, the community came together to stand with the victims. When the Squirrel Hill show was attacked, the Muslim community of Pittsburgh flew me down there to talk at a memorial. There was unity with the victims. And then October 7, 2023 happens. Not only is there no unity, not only does half the world turn their back on Israel and turn their back on the global Jewish community who just endured the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, but half the world, as you all know far too well, blamed the Jews for what happened to them. And this was more than I could take. Beyond the shock of the atrocity itself, as I mentioned earlier, the shock of seeing my neo-Nazi tropes repeated not by hooded Klansmen, not by knuckle-dragging skinheads, but by Hollywood celebrities and Ivy League professors and K-12 educators, it brought me right back to hate. I hated Hamas. I hated Hezbollah, the Houthis, the IRGC, and I hated all the idiots that cheered them on. And they're still not on my Christmas card list, but that feeling of hate really made me feel like I was relapsing. I felt like I started drinking again. I was depressed. I was lost. I felt like I was a fraud. For 15 years, I've been like, yay, we're all human. We can all get along. This is great. And then this happens, and I'm just like, you know what? To hell with this world. To hell with everybody. It hurt so bad. And again, it was the Jewish community that lifted me out of that dark place. It was the Jewish community, whether hanging out with my colleagues. I have a dear friend who's Chabad. I go to dinner with them a lot every time I'm in Philly. I got Jewish friends all over the world, all over the country, hanging out with them, spending time with them, and specifically a memorial for the Bibas family that was at a show in my town. I went to attend. I wasn't speaking. I wasn't like, hey, Arno's here. I just went to show up and stand there with people. And the suffering was palpable. You could cut it with a knife. But despite this massive, crippling suffering, there was not an ounce of hatred amongst the people who had gathered. There was no hatred in the Chabad. There was no hatred at the JCC. There was no hatred at the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement conferences that we all speak at all the time. I know what hate looks like. I'm an expert in hate. I was a Nazi for 7 years, and I've been countering hate for 16 years. And I have not seen a shred of hate demonstrated by the Jewish community. Now, it's not to say no one's ever felt it. Hate is a human emotion. I'm sure everybody's felt it from time to time, but there's a difference between feeling it and letting it pass and grabbing onto it and riding it for all it's worth. And when people tell me that I'm still a Nazi because I'm a Zionist, I'm like, buddy, I spent 7 years as a Nazi, and I spent the rest of my life hanging out with Zionists. And I can tell you, the Zionists I know gather Christmas presents for kids who don't have any toys. That's what Zionists do. There's a big difference between Zionism and Nazism, despite the Soviet disinformation that you're onto from the 60s. And that's a huge part of our message now, because I think it's an onus of civil society to speak out against anti-Semitism, first and foremost because it harms Jews. Secondly, because when anti-Semitism takes hold in a society, things become bad for everyone really quick. And thirdly, because human society is a much better place because of Jewish people. And we all should be grateful for the Jewish population and ready to stand up for them every time they're under attack. Thank you so much.
Before I'm moving to our James Bond, you know, something you said, Arno, kind of stayed with me. Well, actually, two things. I don't know if you guys remember, when they returned the bodies of the Bibas family, we had a meeting, everybody, and Miriam stopped. So I was still working in my previous organization. Silence. Crickets. No one's asking me how I'm doing. Nobody's even mentioning it. I'm sobbing, cannot even sit with my patients that day. And then we had a meeting, and all of you started by the meeting by saying, we're not going to talk about what's going on right now. We're going to talk about today. And you asked me, how are you doing? And you saw me. And then you were crying, and then I started crying, and Miriam everybody was like a lot of crying that day. But I felt so held that day by my people. When I work in this other organization for over 7 years, I thought they were my friends and colleagues, trauma experts, Harvard, right? Nothing. And the other thing that stayed with me, and I don't know if Mubin, you can relate to it as well. So, you know, and I shared it in one of the panels I did earlier today. I'm tired. It's been the third panel today, so sorry if you guys heard me before. But it's a really important story. So on October 7th, I felt that Hamas, they stole something from me. They stole a very, very high value. They stole my compassion. I'm a trauma expert. I'm a human being, but I'm a trauma expert, and compassion is one of the most important values for me. This is how I look at the world and how I interact with people. That's what I need in order to be a successful therapist. And I lost compassion. I hated. I was angry and I hated, and it was really hard. And then I actually listened to a journalist from Israel, Lucy Harish. I don't know if you guys heard one of her interviews, and she was talking about that she made a decision not to let Hamas win. And it really resonated with me. And I said, I'm not going to let Hamas steal away such a strong value, such a high value. And it's a choice. And I had to really practice compassion every day. I had to remind myself, no, I'm going to look to see what's happening in Gaza, and I'm going to raise compassion, and I'm going to go back to my values, because I'm not going to let them steal this away from me. And I think it relates to what you're saying about that choosing to let go of the rage and the anger, because anger, for many times, it's a secondary emotion. It's actually sadness behind it. We use anger as a way of asserting control. People think that anger is about attacking. Anger is about defending. It's when you feel like someone is taking something away from you and you want to defend it. But what's behind it many times is actually sadness. And I chose to sit with the sadness with the help of both of you and the rest of the people. So with that, Mubin,
I need the clicker.
here's the
I need a
clicker.
button push.
Okay, get ready. I'm not the interesting story here.
I was going to make the racist joke on myself. Oh, okay, let's see. Okay. I don't know why it jumped to this, but okay, I'll give you the back end of it. Some of you, I know you were in the previous panel, so my apologies if I'm...
Closer.
Oh, my apologies if I'm repeating. But very quickly, I'll do it quickly, and then I'll come back to some of those points. So just at least so you get the chronology. So I was 19 at the time. So I'm born and raised in Toronto, Canada. All right. Yeah, I know there's the Thornhill contingent. Is that what it is? Oh, it's the Toronto contingent? Okay, so you guys all live in North York for sure. On Bathurst and something for sure. And I probably I've been talking to people like this. Oh, you're from Toronto? Yeah, I'm from Toronto. And we pretty much probably live like 15 minutes away from each other. Okay, I'm at like Black Creek and 401, so yeah. So, born and raised in Toronto, Canada, Indian parents. And we went to Quran school from the age of 5, but went to public school during the daytime. This laid the foundation for an identity crisis that would hit me later in my life. I got to high school. I wasn't bullied. I wasn't picked on. I wasn't a victim of racism. We were the cool kids of school. Too cool because we had a house party. I had a house party. Everybody came over. Unfortunately for me, my uncle walked in on the party. I got caught. Because of the shame and the guilt, I had defiled the home. I had dishonored the family. So I told myself, I'm going to get religious. And I went with a group to India and Pakistan. And in Pakistan, I ended up having a chance encounter with the Taliban. And again, this is this Muslim kid looking for a sense of meaning, belonging, identity, something that resonated with my sacred values, right, to give it meaning, and escalated and continued to escalate. So this is me after I came out. This photo is actually taken in 2004, but this is how I started dressing from 1995. Okay, so for almost 15 years, this is what I looked like. So I was talking to somebody earlier, I don't know, in the previous one, she was in the Air Force during the Second Intifada. Well, during the Second Intifada, I'm on the other side. I'm on the pro-extremist side. Okay, and I remember consuming all these things that were happening in the world. Like in 1996, the Russians invaded Chechnya and the whole fight in Chechnya and the militants that emerged in those days. So I wanted to go and join them in Chechnya to fight. And thankfully, when I went to talk to somebody, in the community, Muslim community, he said to me, he goes, oh, do you speak Russian? Do you speak, Chechen? No. Speak Russian? No. Do you know the terrain in Chechnya? No. He's like, kid, stay in school, let the professionals handle it, right? So then the Second Intifada happens, and I should note, in 1998, I got married. My wife is Polish, glow-in-the-dark white Polish. So my kids look Israeli, I guess, now. And that calmed me down a lot. And in 1998, as part of our honeymoon trip, we went to Israel. And I looked like this. Now, it was before 9/11, so, it was a little okay, right? I got by. And my name is Arabic, right? It's an Arab name, Mubin Shaikh. So the Israelis are like, oh, what Arab country are your parents from? I said, they're not from, they're like, is this Jordan, Saudi, Qatar, this, that. I was like, no, I'm from India. They said, why you have an Arab name? I was like, I don't know, that's what they gave me. So, but it was the experience in Jerusalem, in Israel proper, but I did the Holy Land tour, because as you'll find, I'm a religious person, and I really promote, I'm almost like half Chabad, okay? I'm going to encourage you to go to shul, recite the Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, yes? Okay. So what I saw there though, right? I mean, such a land that has so much history. So anyways, it calmed me down, but I still had one foot in the world. And then 9/11 happened. I don't know what, okay, perfect. Then 9/11 happened. And that made me really rethink what the hell is this, right? Flying planes into buildings, like how is this okay? And I'm Indian background, so I don't know Arabic. I hadn't really studied Islamic studies in any deep way. So I would end up moving to Syria, and I lived there for 2 years. I taught English as a foreign language. I was doing a degree by distance education from a Canadian university in religious studies and social work. I actually did I did a whole an essay on the suffering servant of Isaiah, right? And I was studying Arabic and Islamic studies. And when I say here theological reframing, so it's a fancy term I put here, dogmatic idealism versus pragmatic realism. So that's like pie in the sky or steak on my plate. I was talking to some guys earlier when I showed them the photo. They're like, what happened? And I said, I came back down to earth because I was living in the skies, right? I realized what kind of a police state it was in Syria, and I had this newfound appreciation for the rights that we have in the West. So when I came back, I don't know what's here. When I came back, the first week that I got back, the first Canadian got arrested in connection with the 2004 London fertilizer bomb plot. Momin Khawaja used to sit next to me in the Quran school I went to as a kid. So I ended up contacting the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. I love to make this joke because, I mean, so you got some students here? Because once upon a time, there was this thing called a phone book where everybody's names, numbers, and addresses were available to the public on every street corner. So in the back, there's the government listings, and I saw Canadian Security Intelligence Service. I called them up, and I said, hey, I know this guy. It has to be a mistake. So they said, no mistake, but the fact that you're calling us about him, we want to come and talk to you. I was like, oh. So they came, I told them my life story, and they basically recruited me to be an undercover. And so I worked undercover operations, infiltration operations. There's no Canadians here. I went to Yemen, I went to India, I went to Pakistan. We did some good work. And then, let's see, so the Canadians will remember in 2006, the big Toronto 18 terrorism case? Yeah, so I'm the undercover in that case, right? So, yeah. So that's just a link analysis chart to show like how a seemingly local investigation tentacles out into an international one. Okay, and then this is just a timeline of all the stuff that happened afterwards. So I spent 4 years in 5 legal hearings supporting the prosecution of those offenses. Then in 2010, the case was done. I got onto social media. I had some fake accounts that I was pumping into the extremist networks. Then the rise of ISIS happened in 2012. So the U.S. government basically said to me, hey, come over here, help us. And then from 2012 to 2020, some guys we tracked and some guys got whacked. This is, yeah, I said it. These are tweets from ISIS. Actually, the top one is from ISIS, right? But look at what they say. It's not the number of people that are killed or the degree of brutality. It's how many eyes on. At the bottom, that's actually a friend, but he was just quoting how they use YouTube the same time they do battle. All right? They know what they're doing. They're telling you exactly what they're doing. Yeah, there was all this actionable intelligence. Sorry, I guess the formatting cut the picture off, but Magnus Ranstorp is a well-known academic. I accept him. He's okay.
Don't repeat it.
But there were all these jihadi food collection pictures that I was collecting, right? So here's the food in Raqqa. This is a female ISIS recruiter. Look in the middle. It's Starbucks Frappuccino. Right? This is my favorite because this is an Indo-Pakistani from Britain in Syria referring to pizza as home food. Oh, yeah, this guy. So that in red says murtad. Murtad means apostate. And they believe that an apostate should be killed. And this is actually from ISIS's Facebook page. And what we were doing, we were laying waste to them in their forums. And so they put out a warning to their followers about me. And they were trying to find me all the time. Like, you know, they tried, but this is, so look at the top one. So my handle, the public-facing account, was Caliphate Cop. And so they threatened to kill me all the time, right? Like, so in the top one, he's basically saying he's going to cut my head off. And then I'm shit-talking him back. And then at the bottom there, you can see the ISIS Teletubbies and My Little Pony ISIS, right? And we were mocking them, right? This is because there are different tactics you can use, right? There's like psyops embedded in this, or military information support for operations, MISO or psyops, whatever you want to call it. Oh, okay. So this is a fatwa against ISIS on the left, for those of you who can read Arabic. Right? So those two lines there, it says fatwa. I don't know if it's cut off. It probably is. It says fatwa mufassala, a clear, discerning fatwa. Fi ithbati, on the certainty. Anna Daesha khawarij. The Daesh are khawarij. ISIS are khawarij. Khawarij is a name of the Sikarai, the zealots. So khawarij are zealots. Wa an qitaluhum wajib, and fighting them, to kill them, is obligatory. Okay? Okay. I don't even know which one's coming up. All right. So some more cartoons just to kind of, and these are different ways to engage in the conversation, right? So ISIS as an insider threat to Islam. Oh, it's cut off. If ISIS is Islam, then this is a Mercedes. Giddy up. Okay, I love this because this is how I have been responding after October 7. So like Arno said, after October 7, he felt the way he did. After October 7, I felt exactly how I felt after 9/11. Because I looked at that and I thought, is this Islam? Because I don't accept this, right? This is wrong. And after October 7, when I saw the videos, I was online and I'm plugged in and I saw all that stuff, all of it. And I said, look at this. Don't kill elderly, a child or a woman. Don't mutilate bodies of your enemy. How many of these rules did Hamas break right off the bat? All of them. So this is something I've been telling from the last panel and this panel as well. The response to these people, bless you, the response to these people should be, you are violating your own religious principles. How do you expect God is going to help you? Did he help you? You're praying all day, oh Allah, destroy the Jews, blah, blah, blah. Is he listening to you? No. So if you're breaking the laws, how can you claim that this is justified? Because all these narratives of justification, right? It's resistance. What, rape as resistance? When did that become allowed? So these are the narratives that I use in my, it's just reinforcing, but this was the first caliph. Same thing, don't kill children, women, aged men. Don't harm trees. You cannot burn trees, right? You might pass by people who live like monks and priests. Leave them alone. So how do you then justify targeting them, right? The reciprocity thing. So what they say is that, oh, the Jews, they kill our women and children, so we got to retaliate. Eye for an eye, right? No. It is not permissible. You cannot retaliate using unlawful means. It's not allowed. And this is Al-Qurtubi, who's writing after the Spanish took over. The Spanish killed his father. And this is how he still writes. He's like, hey, you cannot, if they do that, you cannot do it back to them, to make them feel the same.
Mubin.
Almost 5 minutes, 2 minutes?
Got like 5. We have 5 for questions.
Okay.
So Mubin,
I'll wrap this
story
up.
is amazing.
I'll wrap this up, but these are just some of the slides that I use. Check this out. Gaza's own Islamic university, the former head of Sharia there, gave a fatwa against what they did, right? This is Ahmad al-Ahmad from the Bondi Beach attack, right? I know this makes a lot of Muslims mad to see that because he's standing next to a rabbi, but this is what we do, right? So sorry, I went on a little bit, but
hey, that's what we do.
Thank you.
So as you can tell, I have the most amazing colleagues. I'm not just saying it because they're sitting next to me and I feel intimidated by them. They are pretty amazing. Jenny, question for you. So we have our questions, or should we just open it to the audience instead? Let's open it. Shaikh.
Oh yeah, hey, you're the other famous guy here.
It's first of all, it's great to have you here, Shai. I'm a huge fan of yours. Been watching your stuff since 10/7. You do amazing work. We all love you. But the answer to that question is a lot more difficult than me reaching out to some angry 14-year-old who's flirting with white nationalism, because it's an entire like cultural zeitgeist. Over the past 20 years, it's been instilled primarily into young people that life in the world and history and the future is nothing but an oppressed-oppressor binary. You're one or the other. And Elika Laban has put this so brilliantly. Kids nowadays, if you're a white American kid and you're a colonizer and you're privileged and you're an oppressor, well, you can cast all of that on Israel. It's all Israel's fault. They're the white supremacists. They're the colonizers. They're the oppressors. So it's almost like this absolution of their sins. And it makes it very difficult to work with on a larger level. I think what the answer is in society, we all have to work at creating more middle ground. We all have to clear the middle path for people with moderate political views to have a voice, to have a platform, so it's not just two extremes like working like sides of a bellows, like firing each other up. At the same time, my job in this is, which I've been doing to the best of my ability since October 7th, is to say, yeah, if anti-Zionism isn't anti-Semitism, how come you're saying the same things that I say as an anti-Semite 30 years ago? Point out the similarities between the rhetoric of the supposedly pro-Palestinian people, which they're not, they're pro-Hamas. If they were really pro-Palestinian, they would advocate for the end of the IRGC and the end of Hamas. And I think also an important point to make is that if we want a society where people are valued and included, that has to include everyone. You're not going to kill your way to a better future. And when people are on campus locking out professors and advocating for people who are openly slaughtering people, I think it becomes apparent to your average person that that's not the way to go. So we have to create more of that middle ground and point out the similarities between the rhetoric of this camp. And if you look at a white nationalist account nowadays on any social media, they're going, those genocidal Zionists, they're lapping this up, every bit of it. They're parroting the exact same rhetoric of your colleagues at Columbia, Shai, and unfortunately on all these other campuses. So air that out. Let the public know that.
But it's even more than that, Arno. So we have this Venn diagram. So like we mentioned before, we have a helpline. And people call and say, I'm worried about my loved one being radicalized. And about 96 or 97% of the phone calls we get, far left, far right, Antifa, eco-terrorism, anti-Semitism content is what's connecting all of them. So, this is around about activism. This is what I use when I give talks. Nobody really cares, most people don't care about anti-Semitism. They do care about radicalization, or at least I hope they care about radicalization. So when I give talks now in higher education or K-12, I'm very strategic. If they want something about anti-Semitism, great, I have my slides. If they want to talk about something else like radicalization, I bring one of them, and I switch the order of the slides. And I started radicalization because you can't talk about radicalization without talking about anti-Semitism. And we have the data, and you need to make them care. And it started way, way long ago. I don't know about you guys. I'm an immigrant. I heard about the stories from my grandparents. I didn't realize that anti-Semitism is here from the left and from the right. And now it's under social justice. I don't think they're bad people. I think they're on the right side of history. And they don't understand what they're doing. I mean, decolonization psychology bullshit. Anybody else heard about it? Ifat, where are you? Right? Decolonization psychology. It's not about you anymore if you come to therapy. No. You have anxiety? I don't care. It's actually because we're not all liberated. So let's protest instead of that. Literally, therapists canceling sessions with patients and tell them go and protest. So it's from both sides, and we need to make people care about radicalization.
Can I just very quickly, I know we wanted to get on, I'm not going to, I promise, and I already see Jen coming. I think, you will see them in their stage now. the two of us can confirm, because we have that hindsight bias, I guess, but when we were in that space, now we think back to when we were in that space and when people engaged with us. At that time, we may have diminished it, you know, ignored it, probably told them to F off or whatever, but it had an impact. The way people approached us, what they said to us, how they said it to us, and later on, as we matured and we found our pathway out, we look back on those moments. So here you are while they are in that moment. And so you have to see it like this. You're not going to convince them just by engaging with them and debating with them and arguing with them when you meet with them. So don't try to engage them at that level. Try to get them just to have a moment of reflection, however you want to frame it. Like I said, my angle is the religious laws angle. You're breaking your own religious laws. Like, how do you expect you're going to get victory? And that's the only question I ask, and I just leave it like that. I don't need to argue everything else. Find the one good question that you're like, this is a good question, and just deploy that question. That's how you chip away at them. They will come around. Most will come around when they mature out, when they whatever. In the 60s, they were protesting Vietnam and whatever. Like every generation does this. Every college, college students and this and that, they think they figured it all out, right? Everybody goes through that, right? And so if we're meaningful and very deliberate and tactical when you engage with them, you will see the fruits, but later on. I'm just going to leave with this. I'm sorry. I brought an ISIS a supporter of ISIS who was arrested in a terrorism case, and because of a legal loophole, he got off. The charges were dismissed, but we engaged with him while he was in custody, okay? White kid, convert to Islam. God, we don't need any more of those, but okay. And his dad he lives with his granddad 2 hours from here. I brought him here. I brought him here yesterday.
We had lunch with him.
Okay, and we sat, and when we were at the first restaurant, we were talking with a couple of Jewish ladies who were like, oh, how nice to meet you, and then we were talking, and it was good, and I modeled in front of him how to talk with people. And then we went to have lunch, and then he met Arno, right? So he's hearing from Arno, the white former nationalist. He's talking to me, this and that. We got a message. Meeting you all made him feel inspired to want to do work, to give back, and hopefully help other kids leave radicalization one day. So that's that in action, in practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.